This is only you might understand.
Anyway, gentlemen, I think we've done justice to that particular discussion. Allow us to shift focus to other matters.
Sure.
And I see most of us are enjoying a cup of tea. So let's talk about tea. And just this week, a lot has been said about the tea sector, the tea firms. And we well know that Kenya is a big exporter of tea since we grow it right here locally. And I'll just take your attention to one of the pages on the Standard, page 13, that gives us the latest following that particular BBC investigation expose that definitely highlighted some of the perils that are within the tea sector when it comes to sex for work, and it was titled The True Cost of Our Tea. Well, the DPP right now has ordered probe into sex for work, quote unquote, those claims at tea farms. And if I could just give our viewers a little bit more details right there, the DPP has directed the IG, Japhet Kome, to investigate allegations of sexual abuse at tea plantations operated by 2 foreign companies. That follows that particular report I'm referring to, which revealed that more than 70 women have been sexually abused by their managers. That's quite unfortunate, looking at the statistics. 1 is too many, actually. And Haji ordered those investigations, saying they will get to the bottom of the claims as calls mounted for Kenyan authorities to take action. A lot has been said about this, and you can get more details on that particular article on page 13 of the Standard. So, gentlemen, indulge me. Perhaps you came across that particular expose. What did you make of it, first of all, regardless of whether you're a tea enthusiast or not? Because these are our daughters, sisters, mothers that are, put in an unfair position in order to be able to secure that all-important employment. Sakwa Bunyasi, let's start with you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think this, I hadn't seen the expose. But I think it's quite unfortunate. Clearly, it's one of those things that shouldn't be happening, that we must come out all guns blazing to condemn. But I want to step back and say this is not the right way to... It's good that this came up and we should condemn it. But it's just a drop in the ocean. This is happening around us all the time. We hear complaints, and I've got university dons around here. Let me just put a toe in there. About...
For marks,
yes, sex for grades that they get, that you hear about. But there are many other sectors in which this is happening. Harassment, sexual harassment in our workplace is just commonplace. The world has moved on so much that you can't, for example, go to the office and crack sexual jokes just because you think you're funny. You can't imply favors that would be related to somebody. It's not just sex, but tit for tat when people are there because they have terms of reference of what to do. I think we tolerate too much of this kind of thing all around. Talk to women who are in public places at the pressure that they have, even as we speak now, from senior government officials, for people in authority. I think just a widespread cancer that we have got. Now, I'm glad that I hope that this is dealt with, but I hope that it's a lesson to others that may not be touched. It's a horrendous problem. It gives us an additional problem. People can begin boycotting our tea, saying this is, it's coming from workers that have been forced into sexual favors or other forms of favors or other forms of slavery and so on. I think this is very unfortunate indeed.
Excellent.
The first question I would ask is, why BBC? Because I actually saw this article on the BBC, and I was left wondering, why should it come from BBC? And the problem is in Kenya. What is our police doing? What is our investigative agencies doing? Because we cannot have somebody coming from UK to come and find out what is happening to the tea workers. So to me, it means somebody must be doing something that is not right somewhere. Who is covering that? Because they must have been going for a long time. To go 70 and so women, none of them complained. Number two is, as my colleague says, that's not just in tea industry. It's a widespread problem in this country. That if you are a young woman, you are looking for a job, you are looking for promotion, some people will want to get some favors from you. But I think we are not looking at the root cause of the problem. It is not that people have become more immoral on average. This is a problem of a high unemployment rate. Because the economy was growing and there are more job opportunities. And somebody tries to harass me as a young girl. I tell him, I call the bluff and go and look for a job elsewhere. But if you look at the state of the economy, jobs are very hard to come. And people who have power and authority are exploiting that. So one of the easiest ways to solve this problem, in addition to using the legal process, taking this people to court, is to make sure that this economy grows. Whether it is an individual, whether it's the government policies, we must make this economy grow so that people have opportunities, so that people can stand and say, I don't need your job, I can get another job elsewhere. But as long as opportunity is restricted, we are going to have this problem hanging around.
Well, it's referred to as an endemic issue with sexual violence. And Prof, as you come in, I mean, it's clear that this is not an issue that's just beleaguering the tea sector.
Right.
It's widespread. How should we look at it? Because he's raised a very important question, that over 70 women to have gone through such acts is quite a huge number. And I'm pretty sure if not 1 or 2 or 10, perhaps they tried to reach out to the relevant authorities and they didn't get any help. So how do we make sure that in case this happens again, that we nip it at the bud to ensure that it doesn't affect over 70 people?
The first point, there's no any justification whatsoever that should happen, whether there is issues of unemployment, whatever the case might be. It should not at all happen. I'm very hopeful that our current CJ, she's very strong in that, Mother Kaome, very, very strong. And this is something which should get into her, all arms of government, and deal with it and do it decisively, completely. My reading here, there's an element of cover-up, because we know they do happen. Kakuzi was another example, and even challenged the foreign companies. You remember how they boycotted Kakuzi's products. This is something we probably need to, because we have responsibility, even in management of that tea factory, have a responsibility to ensure this doesn't happen. Taking it further to the national level, this is where the governments, this is where the opposition, instead of saying they are all over the street over, these are the areas we touch on. And perhaps if you step back, we might sit here and talk about it because your daughter or my wife is not involved. But that family which has been touched, that family which has been affected, particularly a young girl, that's something that the young girl will live with. You have really messed up. Cut off that lady. Very few of them wake up and become very professional, like this lady in the US. What's the black lady? Very good in the show. Oprah Winfrey. You go, a lot of these things she went through. I would even suggest setting a very strong commission on to look into all these cases across the board, hotel industry, whatever we are, academia, and deal with it once and for all. And be very clear, this is the thing, it happens, my brother is there, put him in as we investigate. So I would strongly say, let's come strongly. BBC, it's also to me in a very strong way of that investigative journalism. We need to bring that investigative journalism, and that the fourth estate has that responsibility really to do that. I agree with you. I was a bit taken back to get it from BBC. The High Commissioner comes very, very strongly, and then we react to that. It's something we should be more proactive, protect our mothers, protect our daughters, protect our country. I would even imagine young men might also be having problems in terms of that. Yeah, it's across the board. Yeah. And it's something as a nation, perhaps we should be even playing for.
Interesting. Anyway, Ramogi, as you come in, it's proper to note that the particular gentleman who is implicated in that investigative piece has actually been dropped from his position. Even as investigations are ongoing, he has been reported to the police for further action. So how should we approach this? Because it might not just be at the bottom of this supply chain, you know, it could be spread across. And tea being a very important export in this country, it definitely leaves a frown on many people's faces. And it has been mentioned it might have further repercussions towards Kenyan tea, which is, you know, hailed for its, I mean, we've enjoyed a cup of tea right here. Yeah.
No, I have many things to say on this one. First of all, he's laughing at me because I always have many things to say. But let me first of all say I feel for the families that were affected by this incident, especially the mothers, the women that have gone through this over the years. It's very sad. Even as we discuss this, of course, we are discussing it from a very non-empathetic area because we've not felt what they felt. So that is acknowledged. But let me also agree with the others that this is just but a drop in the ocean because I come from Nyanza and there have been cases. And of course, they have said before that probably it's just stories by NGOs to get funding. But there have been cases of women getting fish for sex favors, women who actually trade in fish. And so it's not just employment. I think it's poverty manifesting in employment, livelihoods, small business, because now at the cost it's even worse because someone would be doing one business but at the same time forced to go into sex work just to survive. So the problem is national, it's across board, it manifests itself in several sectors. And I agree that we need to be more active on this. I'm not, I also felt the pinch that this came from BBC, but I understood because the West has been very active in terms of gender violence, especially abuse at the workplace. And we have not gotten yet to that place, partly because of our culture. Because, for example, if I call a colleague of mine, instead of calling her by her name, I call her Mrembo, apparently that's sexual harassment.
But she'll be very happy sometimes.
I know. So it's a very interesting world we are in. Or if you, for example, acknowledge that she looks very good today, she'll ask you, would you say the same about a gentleman? And then you will be dumbfounded because you cannot respond in the affirmative.
Okay.
So that apparently that also is sexual harassment. So the whole concept of sexual harassment within the African setup needs to be addressed. Okay. And I'm not saying that this is in the gray. This is sex harassment at the workplace. But we need also to address this as regards now our policy, our law, so that then it makes sense to us. You don't go calling someone Mrembo and you go to jail for 3 years for calling a colleague Mrembo. Finally, if I can also comment on the issue of what next beyond this, because I think that was your question. Yeah, right. What next? Yes, there is need for the Commission to be more active. I think there is the National Gender Equality Commission, NGEC, isn't it? Yeah. Supposed to handle this more aggressively. I think they need to take this up. They need to address the issue with the tea plant stations, but even beyond that. And after that, then we also need to come back and say, how do we empower people? This government came on the back of bottom-up, mama mboga, mwananchi wa kawaida, creating employment, creating opportunities for them. We really need to prioritize that and ensure that these people who are suffering no longer suffer after this 5-year term.
Okay, gentlemen, a lot can be said about this, but allow us to take a short break, even as we continue with the deliberations right here on Morning Prime. It's Sokoni Thursday. We continue talking about matters touching on the economy, and as we come back from this break, we'll shift focus a little bit into matters economy, taking a look at the tax on idle land proposal. Is it a good way to go? Not just that, Kenya Power seeks to increase electricity prices by up to 78%. What do our panelists make of it in the long run, in the short run? Apart from that, we'll equally take a look at the increase in statutory deductions. NSSF monthly deductions set to go up roughly Depending on what pay grade you are in, it'll definitely go up from 200 to roughly 2,060 Kenya shillings. It's all to do with the new saving plan. What implications does it have, not just on the employee, but the employers as well, bearing in mind the current state of the economy? This and other stories coming your way right after the short